I am a Zack Snyder fan. But let me ask you a question. What do you think of when you think of Zack Snyder? Is it his films you think of? That's fair. There's a lot to be said about his films. There have been some conversations about his cinematic style, his uncritical fascist themes and his treatment of source material. Yes, you may have a lot of thoughtful and indeed significant arguments on the issues with Snyder's filmography, all of which are valid and important. I don't think about Snyder's filmography when I think about Snyder. I used to spend a lot of time digesting Snyder's themes, ideas, styles and his legacy, but when I think about Zack Snyder in my ever-advancing age, I don't think about his cinematic style, his fascistic themes or his approach to adaptations. I think of this. Zack Snyder films are not films, they are ammo for the culture war. My thesis is that the fandom surrounding Zack Snyder is less focused on the nature of his films but rather focuses on how awesome the uber-masculinity of his male characters is. For example, Batfleck, have overanalyzed and overglorified by the internet primarily because he is strong and buff and totes could beat Battison in a one-to-one fight. Because that is how we assess the quality of Batman in film now. In short, Zack Snyder fans are less impressed by BVS and more by You think people like Batfleck BQace it as an honest and personal depiction of the sad, lonely, aging, vulnerable, insane but healing Batman from The Dark Knight Returns? No. Do people like Batfleck because he can go all John Wick in action scenes? Maybe. But Batfleck being admittedly really cool in action scenes is only half the picture. However, do people like Batfleck because he is a perfect picture of stoic, dude bro masculinity who never cries, does not opens up about his emotions and just punches things? Maybe. I'm not saying Zack Snyder fully views his Batman as a buff dude bro who just ices people left and right, although that is a significant aspect of Batfleck. Zack Snyder's true version of Batman is a lonely boy disillusioned with the idea of a fair world, disillusioned with the idea of a just God, disillusioned with the idea of a savior, a Superman. Batfleck is about a boy asking God why his parents had to die. Batfleck as a character has a really solid foundation. Batfleck as a character is not empty. There is actual characterization with Batfleck. But is that what the Snyder fandom focuses on? Trust me, a lot of Batfleck memes and online discussions focuses on how strong and buff he is, especially in comparison to Battison. Even though Ben Affleck is only 3 inches taller than Robert Pattinson. I have seldom seen a Snyder fan actually try to engage with the themes of Snyder's films. Always, at every turn, Snyder fans seem to worship the physical prowess and sheer masculinity of his protagonists. Snyder fans don't even seem to care that much about Snyder's films. When Snyder fans think of Zack Snyder, they don't think of his films. They think this. This even falls in line with Patrick Willems' thesis that Snyder is a himbo auteur, an action and aesthetics-driven creator. And while I do argue there are interesting themes in his work, sometimes they just aren't super developed and may not even be the result of his own input. Those complex themes about the disillusionment with God could just be the writers of BVS, Chris Terrio and David S. Goyer respectively, and not something Snyder personally added himself. Again, the actual themes and stories of Snyder's films are not central. They are peripheral to fan discussions of them.
And I sort of feel bad for Snyder because discussion of him is inseparable from his toxic fandom. Imagine that. Imagine you have risen to a state in Hollywood where you can express your voice, your vision, your heart and soul crafted and displayed for millions to see, and it inspires all of this crap and controversy. When I think of Zack Snyder, I think of his toxic fanbase. I seldom think of him. Firewood Media has stated that Zack Snyder fans are one of the most toxic internet fandoms, and Zack Snyder is not only complacent in such a fandom but actively creates dark and nihilistic films that attract extreme and intense people. And while I fully agree with that statement, it implies that Snyder is to blame for the toxicity of his fans. Which is partly true. Whenever he is questioned about the toxicity of his fans, he merely replies with how they done so much for mental health charity, an objectively amazing thing, but does not acknowledge or, more importantly, condemn people who toxically defend him, who appropriate the death of a young girl to suit their own ends, who mock the films of other competent creators even before those films are released. I have also been personally harassed by Snyder fans online. I haven't released this video yet, but I can assure you that such harassment is going to resurface once it does. But is that Zack Snyder's fault? Is he to blame for this? My mind falls back to my first showing of Oppenheimer. I remember sitting there in the theater and Albert Einstein speaks with J.R. Oppenheimer. What Einstein said in this scene shook me. With all these awards they shower you with, just remember, they are not for you. Zack Snyder is an interesting filmmaker. I like his style. Sometimes he comes close to something poignant. He knows how to direct Michael Bay-esque action. I like these aspects. I am a Zack Snyder fan. But the actually interesting and good parts of his work are overshadowed. They have been reappropriated and warped into something else. Something almost unrecognizable. This obnoxious flood of hate, death threats, and downright narcissism of the Snyder fandom will outlive Snyder. And in 10 years, we still be talking about the toxic fandom. Snyder films will be in the periphery. I want to end this video by looking at one of Snyder's recent films, Army of the Dead. It's sort of fun. It's funny, it's kooky, it can be tense at times, but what stuck with me the most was the scene where the Dave Bautista character has a talk with his daughter. The scene is about a daughter saying that when her mom died, she needed her father to comfort her, to help her grieve. This is such a drastic breakaway for the role men have in Snyder's films. We are seeing a man who needs to change, who changes across the film and goes on a developed, explained, clear and emotionally resonant. Heck, a daughter pleading her father to be more emotionally open feels like Snyder ripping out a page from his own life. It's personal, it's beautiful even. Yet, I don't see as many Snyder fans defend Army of the Dead as much as Man of Steel or BVS, films that are around 10 years old. When you stop giving people what they want, they leave.